Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once more to the Fallout Bar here at Online Darts. Myself, Jack Gobbygowan, in the hot seat as always. And not Cam, Mr. Henry Deacon. How are we?
Yeah, I don't know whether that's an upgrade or not, but it's great to have your company. Is it the first time we've ever done this together?
I think it must be, Normally you're like the call up for Women's Series or Pro Tour when I'm otherwise engaged, and now it's sort of like
basically nobody else.
Very last minute to be at the Premier League, so it's just me and you left.
I'm basically just, if no one else is available, just ring me. Basically.
Maybe you should just sign up to it at the start and crack on.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah. First time I've had a chance to speak to you, and I probably should have warned you this before I pressed start, but you were at the WDF World Championships a couple of weeks ago in a media role. How did you find that? How did you find the tournament, etc.? Let's have a quick chat over that one.
Yeah, first of all, great fun. I think before the event, there was a lot of skepticism about how the event would work, whether it would work or not. But I think speaking with a WDF hat on here, obviously being involved with the team for the event, obviously there was one or two issues. Obviously, you had a generator issue, didn't we, on the Tuesday night, which unfortunately happens. But I think apart from that, the tournament went smoothly. But I think the biggest credit is how that situation was dealt. I think under previous ownerships and previous regimes, that could have been a chaotic situation. But I think the way it was handled, both players knew of the situation throughout. Obviously, there was delays to the game midway through. Both players knew how long they were getting as far as a break's concerned, and they were told as soon as they go back out, we played to a finish, kept the same structure, everything like that. So I think once we got past that, I think we kind of got into a bit of a rhythm very quickly. I think momentum started to build. I think the one thing that was disappointing ultimately was the ticket sales, but I think that's something that I know Richard Ashdown said in interviews that is going to be addressed for next year, whether the tour will be at Lakeside or wherever it's going to be held, whenever it's going to be held. But I know from a Eurosport perspective, I spent a lot of time with them over the championship. They were really, really happy with the product, with the production as well, which I know was another thing a couple of people flagged up before the event. The Televideo, who are the partners for that event, were brilliant. Again, to deal with, they were great because obviously I was kind of the middleman between the WDF and Eurosport, and the players. They thought it was a great event. I think again there was a lot of not skepticism, but I think there was a worry about how this would go about. It's a new tournament, new format, obviously based on what's happened before. That there was obviously could be one or two concerns, but I think they were alleviated quite quickly. And I think again, WDF hat on. I think we've come out of this tournament in a much better state than we come into it, and the key now is to build up some momentum that's been built by these championships. I know that discussions are being had for the World Masters and possibly having Eurosport back on board for that. I know there's been talks in the background during the championships about Eurosport wanted to try and commit into the future. Obviously, I'll leave that to the powers that be. But it's good to see that the championship went ahead. It was successful. And hopefully on the back of it, it'll attract sponsors, it will attract the fans back into the Lakeside. And hopefully, if we can get the tournament on, we know about the tournament early, the promotion gets done early and kind of build on the first year success.
Yeah, and I guess the most important thing, judging by Richard Ashdown interviews and various other bits and pieces I've picked up from the week, is that wherever the next tournament is, there is a karaoke option afterwards, Henry. Maybe it's not the most important thing, judging by what I've heard. Maybe you enjoyed yourself a little bit too much in that regard.
I decline to comment on any such rumours that I might have been on the karaoke every night. But there was some interesting karaokes. Mike Warburton butchered Delilah.
As well, of course he did.
Yeah, he absolutely butchered that. Bo Greaves and her family had an interesting rendition of her walker after she won the title. But I think that was one of the other good things. It brought everybody together. The broadcast team came in every night. John Warning, Tony O'Shea, people like that came in every night. And it kind of brought everybody together. And it was a great team that we had put together from across the world. We had people from officials from America, officials from Romania that were a part of the team. So I think as far as the first event's concerned, that was one thing that definitely helped make a success because it knitted everybody together quite quickly.
Yeah, right, let's look ahead to tonight. I'm going to say hello to some people in the chat room at first. Maliki says I got the champagne out because Wade is night 12. I cannot confirm or deny that, but I certainly don't drink champagne. None of this tungsten toff nonsense. Colin's in. He's saying hello to various people. Women's Darts is in as well. Craig is in. I presume you're watching from home tonight, Craig, although you'll be back in Glasgow next week, I think. Aaron's in as well. Evening, everyone. What a performance from Wade. Indeed, we will get onto that one very, very soon. Colin says hello to both of us. Yankee Clipper is in. Jolly good to see you yourself. He also says, poor Phil. Yeah, we'll get to that one very, very shortly after the message I've just had. HTV's in his voice says, Phil Cobb and Wade, the ever-going triangle drama continues. It does indeed. I'll spill the beans now. Regular viewers of this show of the Fallout Bar will know that what will happen now is Henry and I will review the 7 matches we've seen tonight. Not massively in depth, but we'll give the odd pointer, the odd this person's in trouble now, etc. Then, in that time, what normally happens is it's given Phil enough time at the venue to take an interview, to clip the interview, and just give us a little snippet of what you guys can expect. That won't be happening tonight. There was no conversation had. So there is no triangle, there is no drama, there is no short, sharp, snappy interview clip for you tonight, unfortunately, of your winner, James Wade. But we're going to carry on with the rest of the show as normal. Then obviously we will get our predictions in for next week, which, I mean, we probably should have taken more care over with this entire campaign because I didn't have a clue what I predicted all season. The chances of Henry being back here next week to back up what he's predicted are very, very slim. We're going to do it anyway because that's just the way the show works. And then we're going to carry on.
The only guarantee is Phil's put Michael Van Gerwen to win.
Pretty much how it works every single week. Adjan says, evening lads, walking in a Wade Wonderland. Well, I don't think the Irish are too happy about that because they were not his biggest fan in the crowd this evening. Jack says, in Dublin, great atmosphere, delighted for Wade. You must have been the only person in the room, buddy, from what I could hear through the TV. Bob says, good evening. And Craig will be in Glasgow next week. Yes, you will indeed. Right, let's actually look back at tonight's action, Henry. The night started with a little bit of a bang. Look, the averages don't finish that way, but the first 10 legs of this game, or 9 legs, shall we say, were absolutely superb. James Wade and Michael Van Gerwen going at it. At one point, it was 108, 109, 111 averages being chucked in all over the place. It finishes with a 99 average for James Wade, 103 for Michael Van Gerwen. But job done for Wadey, who... I'm going to bring this up at some point, Friday night, and I'm going to drop in about it now. He threw first because that's where he is in the draw, and it gets him over the line in the decider.
Exactly, and you work your way up, how you work your way up. And sometimes when you look at these 6-5 matches, and you can kind of look back and see little moments or little bits in the statistics where you can kind of see where the game's won or lost. But for me, when you actually look back at this one, it probably was just as simple of as Wadey having the darts and the odd-numbered legs, and you know how proficient he is on throw, and that was kind of the difference in that one. Apart from that, there's not really there was hardly anything for me that kind of got in between the pair.
No, look, James Wade's incredibly difficult to beat when he's chucking in his mid-90s average, when he's chucking steady tons, etc. But he's just added that extra level of his scoring power. And Dan just made that point in the chat room now. Can we now stop talking about Wade not being a great scorer because he's thrown 10-plus averages consistently lately? He has. And the biggest asset to that game, I think, is the amount of times he's converting 180 to 140. He has always been a pretty heavy 140 hitter, but he's in so many more 180s recently. It just gives you that extra boost in the leg, doesn't it?
Well, those 40 points, they're so crucial. That's the difference between potentially being on a 161 and 121. And 161, you've got a real outside squeak, whereas a 121, you've got half a chance. And it's those little margins that have been the massive difference. And as we know, Wade's a really, really consistent player, and those 140s have been a real strength of his over the years. And that's why he's won what he's won. But when you're in an elite company like this and you're playing in an 8-player field with the best 8 players in the world, it's those small margins which make a a big difference over 16 weeks. And as you say, that scoring power, that 180 power that he seemed to have added to his game over recent weeks and recent months has been absolutely key. I mean, you look at the averages. If it weren't for the fact that he missed 9 darts at double, he'd be probably about 101, 102 in the scoring phase. And we're used to talking with James Wade probably about a mid-90s being another player's ton. So I think when you know that he's still as proficient in the doubles, that sort of scoring power makes him as dangerous a player as anyone anywhere in world darts at the minute.
As the rest of the field are finding out right now. Tonight was his final, by the way. We'll get there very, very shortly. Let's move on to game number 2. I'm from Sublime to... I'm trying to change mine. What be yours, Henry?
I don't know. I was hearing something as if it was you were in the back of Heathrow Airport, which is kind of gone now. Interesting.
I can still hear a little bit of a buzzing, but I've changed microphone input.
I'll have a little play whilst we talk about this next game. Then
from the Sublime to perhaps the not so much Sublime. Going Price getting over the line against Joe Cullen 6-3. However, not a great performance from either. 90 average from Going Price, just an 81 from Joe Cullen. He did post on his social media that he just didn't know what happened, just didn't get going and didn't get comfortable from dart number 1. But perhaps this is and always has been the concern about Joe Cullen being in this Premier League, is that his B game just it's just not really at the same level as the rest of this field. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but that's always been the thing that Joe Cullen's missing. When he's on it, when that action is on it, Rolls Royce $1 million, but it is so outside of his body. The setting points are so different. It's so much harder for him to be consistent than the others.
It's a tougher action compared to the rest, absolutely. And especially now it's a tournament format over 16 weeks. Every single defeat that you have in this competition, especially in the quarterfinal stages, gets scrutinised much more than a league phase. Say this was in a league format, we'd probably be talking about, okay, off night, goes again next week, doesn't do much to the league table. But because it is a tournament-type format, it does get scrutinised that bit more. From Gerwin's perspective, it was just all win's a win. It's on the board. He's still in the competition. Interestingly, the walk-on song change as well, which I'm sure you'll be getting onto at some point soon. But for Joe, I mean, it's tough to be hypercritical when you're playing in, because they're effectively 16 tournaments, aren't they? And if you're playing in 16 tournaments, you're bound to have 1 or 2 where you don't play so great in, as long as they don't supersede itself, which, to be fair to Joe, it hasn't. He's had 1 or 2 weeks, yes, a bit like this, where he hasn't maybe played to his potential. But what he does do, he backs it up in the weeks where he's on song by making finals. He's made 3 finals, won 1 of them. So he does supersede the weeks where he goes out in quarterfinals with latter stage action in another week along the line. So for that, fair play to him. It keeps him right in the playoff mix.
It does indeed. We'll look at the league table in a bit, because that's the first reminder that there is actually a league table in the Premier League of darts, because it's been quite easy to forget that at times throughout this season, but that is something...
Clear in the second word.
Yeah, and still we're just like, they're just playing for 10 grand.
Be nice.
Let's move on. We'll talk Gezi again in a minute. Next up, a game that was pretty much, despite there being 4 nights left, loser goes home, because there is so much work to be done for whoever loses this match. There's so much work to be done for the winner of this match, to be honest. They are so far adrift to everybody else, but with the point system, it is still possible for them to catch the top 4, but it would take something special. The doubles look okay, but once again, it's 6-2 loss for Gary. He's in a habit of losing 6-2, 6-3, playing okay for the first couple of legs and dropping off, and that's exactly what we've seen again tonight.
Yeah, I thought it was a more important night for Michael Smith probably than it was for Gary. I think it was more important perhaps out of them two to get the 2 points. Well, I say 2 points, I'm going back on old Premier League rhetoric here, but to get the quarterfinal victory, to get those those extra points on the board. For Gary, as you say, it probably is a case of his playoff chances are hindered. But again, the thing with this tournament format is he could go and win the next 2 nights, put 10 points on the board, and he's bang right in the mix, probably third, fourth, something like that. And then you're talking about Gary in the playoffs. That's the one good thing this tournament format does do. And you won't write off Gary being one of those players that ends up going and doing that. But as you say, a lot of work for him to do now. It probably is a case of Premier League, okay, put a line in the sand, work for the rest of the year, try and maybe nick a 10k night here and there, because that's the joy of this new format. But yeah, disappointing for him. As you say, it's as if he kind of dovetailed. I mean, we're talking about man who's averaging 102, which is ridiculous. But yeah, Michael Smith just kind of found the gears when he needed to find the gears and got over the line. Big 2 points for him. Big victory for him. I keep saying 2 points. Big victory for him to get himself into a semi-final. It gets points on the board. How many points, God knows. But it was crucial for him to kind of keep some kind of playoff hopes alive anyway.
Yeah, it is big points because, again, it is still a league table and we are forgetting that at times. But as much as I want to believe that, you said it there, you can't write Gary Anderson off for going winning 4 weeks in a row. I'm not sure this is the same Gary Anderson anymore. It's not the same bloke that gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to go and beat Michael Van Gerwen today, or I'm going to go and put some practice on the board today. He's never been the biggest practicer, but the minute he started to lose that fight a little bit, there's just nothing there from Gary that makes me believe that that's still the same Gary that went and lifted as many trophies as he did over the 3-4 year period where he was arguably the best player in the game, because there were times when he had Michael Van Gerwen exactly where he wanted him. He just does not have that same get up and go, that same desire to go on and just beat whoever they want.
Agreed. I think also with Gary, he's got to feel like as if he's the governor, he's the man, he's the one everybody wants to beat. And I think every year at Ali Pali, the reason why he does so well is everybody talks up his chances year on year, and he's like a postman, he delivers in that respect. I think in this Premier League format, that's much more difficult because, as you say, you're playing the 8 best players in the world, maybe not representative in the rankings, but based on performances over the past 12 months. So I think that makes it much more difficult for him because he's not there to be shot at, unlike in other tournaments like the Match Play and the World Championship. And I think when he's kind of among that floating group, I don't think that suits his style of play so much. He wants to be the one talked about. He doesn't like the idea of Gerwin, Michael, Peter, James being spoken about.
It is not indeed. Let's move on then to the quarterfinal of the evening, and it saw the reigning world champion, world number 1, Peter Wright, take on the most informed man in the Premier League, arguably, Johnny Clayton. A win for the Ferret once again, as he was on the hunt for back-to-back wins on the evening in the Premier League. 6-3 for the Ferret, 100 average. And again, you can sit and watch Johnny Clayton's performances, and it just looked easy to him. It didn't look like he was exerting an awful lot. He's at that level now where he can make 100, 101, 102 averages look like he's struggling.
He's got to that phase of his career where he's found out what gears he needs to find at the right times. And because he had such a good 2021, it was something that he had to develop as time went on. And I think he's almost found the right gauge at the right time. And he's learned how to pace himself in tournaments, because the more you're successful, the more you learn to kind of know when to put stuff in the reserves. It's almost mental petrol to a certain extent. He's put as much as what he's needed to put in for that particular game against Peter. He's not put an ounce more or an ounce less. He's put what's right. And it served him, it's got him the job, and it's got him through to the semi-final. It then makes him fresh, in inverted commas, for that semi-final. He's becoming better at going through the gears, same as Michael did over that 3-year period. How many ITV events did he win over that period where he just knew the right amount of energy to exert at the right times? That's what Johnny's doing. That's why he's been one of the most successful players, I think, in this Premier League format.
On to then the the semi-finals. We don't need to touch on Peter Wright an awful lot. He'll be back. He'll be steady. He's still in the hunt. We'll go from there. The semi-finals saw one of the greatest Premier League performances you will ever see from anybody, and I'm not. It's still happening when I'm mute, so it's not me. I'm not overrating that. It was the best average James Wade has ever put in on TV. It was the new record for this year's Premier League campaign: 114-7-3 from the machine, James Wade, in a 6-1 demolition over Gerwyn Price victory. And it's a couple of years ago when James Wade got his way back into the Premier League. I think it's you, mate. A couple of years ago when James Wade snuck his way back into the Premier League, he sort of just had Michael van Gerwen's number for an entire campaign. This time, it's that 4 from 4 against Gerwyn Price now. He's just all over the Welshman.
Yeah, indeed he is. I mean, first of all, 114 is not too shabby one little bit. But against Gerwyn, he's played his best stuff as well. I mean, there was another... I can't remember the average, so don't quote me on it, but wasn't there another demolition of Gerwyn where he hit something probably 105 plus or something along them lines? Is that against Gerwyn he hit something like that? So he seems to have both his and Michael's number at the minute, because he's getting results against Michael van Gerwen at the same time. But yeah, that was a fantastic performance. I mean, sublime. We spoke, didn't we, earlier on, that with Wade we more associate him with that sort of consistent game where he'll hit 15 darters from dusk till dawn or whatever. But now he's hit, he's always hit the odd big average here and there, but it's the consistency of these big averages now, which has been a real trademark of James Wade's game over the last few months. And I think that's what makes him probably one of the most dangerous players in the Premier League, if not the most dangerous player in the Premier League right now. I mean, Gerwyn Price, I mean, at a certain point in a game like that, you kind of drop off and not accept defeat, but you kind of accept the outcome of the match. I mean, 99 wasn't going to cut it against 114, and again, that's probably a base level for Gerwyn. It's that mental petrol where you just try and get out what you could. It just wasn't good enough on that occasion. But yeah, sometimes forget about what the opponent does. You just got to stand there and applaud the good darts that your opponent played, and that was exactly the case in James Wade. Fantastic victory, 6-1, and inside he will be more than happy with it, but I think internally he just wanted to get going, just get to the final and try and seal that weekly victory.
Yeah, and I think what's more impressive about this performance is he just averaged 114, 7 legs, 85% on the doubles. You expect that from James Wade, but he's just done that, hitting just 180. That's just how ridiculously solid his scoring and consistency has been. He just did not miss that treble bed.
Exactly. We're probably going to contradict ourselves about the amount of 180s that he's been hitting over recent times, more than he has done 140s. But it also goes to show, and it is sounding quite contradictory to what we were saying earlier, that as well and good as it is to hit 180s, if you hit them sparingly, then they're a useless tool. You'd rather have 15 140s in the bank than 2 180s, wouldn't you? Because yeah, the 180s may look good on your match stats, but if they don't really equate to anything in a leg, then they're kind of pointless and useless, aren't they? So it just goes to show that consistency of scoring power can lead you to these big averages, twin with the fact that he's one of the best finishers on tour and continues to be one of the best finishers on tour, and it makes you average big numbers like that without needing that 180 power.
Does indeed. We're going to move on to the second semi-final in just a moment, but a few more from the chat room. Tommy says you have to admire Wade. People doubting for looking at consistency, been at the top for 15 plus years now. Jamie questions if I watched all of tonight's action, considering what other sports were on. Don't know what you mean, mate. There was football, there was snooker on, but I'm loyal to the darts. And the stat screens massively help at this time of night. I cannot lie at all. Just for that little refresh. Look, multi-screen it. 2022, it's what we do. What's happened with Wade? An interview. We are getting an interview, but I'm not sure if we're going to get a clip of it. It's just been conducted by somebody else for the evening. Bob says Wade's average was unbelievable getting to go in price. Wade had over 114. He did indeed. I love the comedy about the buzzing. We are trying to work on it as we keep the show going because it's live. Jamie says answer your phone. Someone says something about bee spray as well. Is that the missus alarm going off? Yeah, brilliant. Aaron says Wade is having fun again. I think a lot of people are in trouble. Look, made 5 finals in this Premier League campaign. He's just picked up his second as well. Jamie's popping off at the format as well. Weekly Darts Caster in. Jolly good to see you guys. Hope you are all well. And that's about it for the chat rooms. Let's move on then to the second semi-final. We said that Gary versus Michael Smith losing at home. Is this a case of Smith might be done as well now, losing 6-4 to Johnny Clayton? It's just not great for him, is it? They're very much adrift at the bottom, and that's all right. Winning that first game, it's the absolute bare minimum you can do, but at some point, you have to turn these semi-finals into finals. You have to turn those finals into wins.
I think he's definitely got to win one from here on in and probably make a final as well to make inroads in that top 4 race. But I think he'll be kicking himself at this one because he's had his chances and he's had his opportunities in this match as well. I think it'd be one of those, sometimes when you're on the back of the score and you think, okay, maybe I've always been a leg or two behind on the opponent. It's probably a fair reflection, but I think he'll kick himself. There's one or two opportunities in the game where he could have got himself in front or could have got himself in and around Johnny, but just couldn't take them. And look, we've been speaking about how ruthless the Ferret has been in recent times and how consistent he is, and he won't give chances to his opponents. And that was another case of that. He didn't really... Everything Michael Smith had in that match, he had to earn. There was no cheap opportunities given to him, really, in that match. But then at the same time, as I say, I think Smith got himself in positions to really trouble him, but just couldn't quite at times find that extra gear in the doubling department.
It's a little bit of a case of it never rains, it pours. You look at when Van Gogh was struggling for form last year, and it was constantly solid performances against him. It feels very much, not every week in this Premier League campaign, but you look at Michael Smith as the world championship runner-up, gone deep again, losing out in finals, and he's the only one in this field that still doesn't have a win on this night, running out of weeks to do so as well. You finally get through a first round for the first time in a couple of weeks for Michael Smith, and you hit by 104 average against your own average from Johnny Clayton, and you're just like, if I chuck in there were times when if you chuck in 104, you win the match. You shake your hand, brilliant, job done. That's the level of performance I need to get to. Playing these guys week in, week out at this level, it's so much more difficult to just do that, get over the line, and be job done with it.
It's almost as if one week he'll average 87 and probably win 6-0, and that would be the sort of sod's law that he needs. And I can imagine it's probably the toughest thing for a player because, yeah, we're talking about Michael Smith losing games, but we're not talking about Michael Smith playing bad because he hasn't played bad at all. It's just at times that maybe that little bit of luck, that missed double here and there has come to cost him. It's been really small margins in Michael's case. It's not as if he's played poorly at all, and there shouldn't be any suggestion of that at all. He just needs that little bit of a rub of the green somewhere. And I know I joked a second ago about, probably could do with an 87 average an 87 and probably just getting over the line a bit lucky, but it really could be as small a spark as that. He just needs something to kind of fire his way. I mean, in fairness to him, outside of the Premier League, his form's been tip-top. And we've seen it at times, haven't we, where players struggle in the Premier League and it absolutely falls back on their Pro Tour game. They struggle to win a match on the Pro Tour. Maybe if they're having to go for Euro Tour qualifiers, fail to qualify. It hasn't backed up onto his Pro Tour game. So that's one positive. But he must be thinking, he must be scratching his head tonight thinking, how do I get a break? How do I get a break? And look, it's tough because you've got the best 8 players in the world. So I absolutely get it's going to be difficult to find one of them. But having 104 and still being on the wrong end of the scoreline, yeah, that's an ouch, isn't it?
It is indeed for Michael Smith. More comments in the chat room. Let's go with Tommy's question. Do you think Smith will win any of the week remaining? I'll let you know. This one, definitely your mic, Henry. You got a headset on. Could we use that one instead?
I mean, we can have a try. I'm looking at the wrong end of the camera. Hold on. Let me give that a try. Hold on. This is DOI SOS here, isn't it?
You wouldn't believe the man works in radio, would you? Audio is his thing.
Thing is, it works on radio.
That's perfect. Why have we not done that for the last half an hour?
I don't know. I've even got a branded mic for it as well.
Yeah, that's busted, mate. That's not good at all. Right, where were we? Do we think Smith will win any of the weeks remaining? 4 weeks left, plus finals night. Not sure he's going to be in that one. Will he?
I mean, it's hard to rule out any of the 8 winning at any particular night because anything can go your way at any moment. But I think more than anything, it's the fact that it's those little moments where luck hasn't just been on his side, or it's those little moments that kind of gone against him. So that would probably be the argument if you're playing in the camp of against. But I think you're a fool to rule out any of the 8. You got the 8 best players on the planet. They're there because they want at least something. Well, you got 8 of the best players on the planet. Let's put it that way. So it'd be a mug's game in the most open PDC era in history to rule anyone out winning one particular week is probably me sitting on the fence about it. But
okay.
One week Wade was fortunate to win a week and he goes and wins it.
Yeah, look, Gary was very fortunate to win his week. Joe Cullen, possibly you could say the same. They weren't the best performances. Would you be more inclined to say that Michael Smith could still win a week in the last 4 if he wasn't the only man to have not won one? Because look, it's definitely not about ability on the hockey. For me, it's a mental block with Michael Smith. And this being the last one, not being over the line, not having a major title, winning in a final on TV, that must be contributing in a format that was meant to unlock this. You start the first couple of weeks, he's looking okay, got 16 attempts to get over the line, and now he's running out of attempts, and everybody else has got over the line, including Gary Anderson, who has been absolutely terrible for the rest of the campaign, including Joe Cullen, whose B game at times hasn't quite been there, but he got over the line in the least spectacular fashion I think you're going to see from this Premier League campaign. James Wade at the very, very start of the campaign was tipped to not win a week. People said that the format didn't quite suit him. Look, UK Open speak for itself in the past, but the rest of it doesn't really play into his nature. He's not been the most prolific Euro Tour winner when you have to play 3 games on the final day in that regard, etc. It's just all seemed to not be playing into Michael Smith's hands right now.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, would you almost want to pause at this moment in time in the Premier League if you're Michael Smith? Almost have a gap of a week, or a bit like that gap. Do you remember that gap we had between Berlin and we were meant to, because we couldn't go to Berlin? How he would have liked that now, perhaps, because for me, let's say he can win any week, but as you say, if you keep going at quarterfinals, semi-finals, it's an effect that snowballs in the Premier League. As I say, it hasn't shown probably in a Pro Tour sense, but in terms of the Premier League, it can snowball when you keep going out the same competition week in, week out. I mean, this is where you hope that those closest to him are kind of taken to his side. Hope he doesn't read some of the vile messages on social media, and he just kind of blocks himself out. Because, as I say, on any given week, he can, but if you keep going out early and you keep having that same feeling that you're turning up to a venue at, say, 4:30 to practice for 7:00, knowing that once you've played your first game, you might be going home, because that's kind of been how the routine's been. Yeah, that's a terrible feeling. And when it's week in, week out, we've seen it before. Mark Webb's been very open about this in the past. The Premier League can eat you up and swallow you if you're not careful. I'm not saying that's going to happen in Michael Smith's case. I'm not suggesting that for a minute, but it can snowball if you're losing early week in, week out. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's just... again, where I think it's a bit of a mental block is that week 4 semi-final, week 5 runner-up, week 6 runner-up. Back-to-back defeats in that week. After that, this is the first week he's got past the quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
In weeks where there's been bars given out, there's been Gerwyn Price struggling with his hand injury, Gary Anderson's not been the best for the last few weeks. He's just not making the most of those opportunities at all, is he?
No, and I mean, although he didn't get anyone with a green, did he, with any buys or things along those lines? But yeah, I mean, and this is the problem when you're also playing, as I say, you're playing 8 of the best in the world. You don't get sympathy votes altogether. If your opponent's got the opportunity to exploit one flaw in your game, then they're going to take it. And the last few weeks, apart from tonight where he did get over the line in his quarterfinal against Gary, that's kind of been exposed to a certain extent. But as I say, if he's going to get in the playoffs, the minimum he's got to do from here on in is win a night and make another final, and then probably can only afford one night where he goes out in the quarterfinals. He's got to make hay while the sun shines now if he's going to make it through to the playoff night. The do runners up nights do give him an outside squeak, but he's got to do business now and get it done quick.
He does indeed. Right, let's move on then. On to the final. I'm talking of do business. These two did business. Superb matchup between James Wade and Johnny Clayton. It looked like James Wade was going to be pretty comfortable with this one, actually, through the early phases. 2-0 to the good, looking absolutely solid. Clayton hits back-to-back 17 dart legs, so there were chances there for James. He just went off the ball a little bit, puts himself out in front, and then Wade is just solid, reels him back in, stakes it steady. Match darts missed by both, but it is James Wade who picks up a title once again. Chris Murphy with a couple of funny posts on Twitter earlier. 2 ton plus checkouts in this final, both of them 118, so you know exactly which famous brothers were on social media earlier on, the twins from the advert. But look, a superb final between 2 superb players. Once again, both in great form, played in good fashion between both the players. Unfortunately, there was the booing and whistling, etc., that you get from the crowd as per, and a lot of it felt like a lot more of a wall of noise tonight than individual stupid squeaks that you get, but there were still a couple that just have absolutely no time for that, but I can't bother to talk about that again because it's just going blue in the face. But yeah, dart-wise, an absolutely great final between 2 great players in great form.
Absolutely, and we were talking earlier, weren't we, about mental petrol and just having enough for the right times. And even though Wade went ballistic in his semi-final, he still had enough to go through the gears in the final. And that was kind of the difference in the end, wasn't it? Wade's consistency just kind of came through. And yeah, Clayton did okay to kind of come back from that early setback. Both players, as you say, had match starts to win the game. But you always felt that when push came to shove in that final, Wade always had a gear and just had something he could kind of find and dig out from the recesses, and that was exactly what he did in the end.
He did indeed. Let's not dwell on it too much because we're already quite deep into the show. We've picked off various other parts. As we said, great final. Let's just crack on with that one. We do have a clip from the winner, James Wade. So here we go. Then we'll look ahead to next week very, very quickly. Chat room, that's the bit where you guys get involved even more. We'll be asking for your score predictions through the first 4 games and then who you think your finalists and winner will be. But for now, this is James Wade after he won night 12 of the Premier League.
Yeah, at times people like me even get fortunate, and you put what you got to do is in darts, and I think the younger players and less experienced players need to realise if you put yourself constantly in that right position and the right situation, and you get to that point where you can either choke or you can move on. And I believe I proved that for the last, I think I would say 5 or 6 weeks, and so. It's great to have a positive interview, and moving onwards. I'm far more happier than most people in the Premier League at the moment. So moving on forwards, I'm happy.
Happy, James Wade. And look, it is noticeable that James Wade is happier on stage, on the hockey, just jumping around. He's more animated, but in a good way. It's not aggressive. It's not anger. He's just enjoying playing darts for what feels like the first time in a long, long time for James Wade. For the best part of a decade, it's almost been, this is my job, this is what I do, hold my hands up and say sorry if I pinch something. But actually now he's realised that I'm still pretty good at this and I'm going to have fun while I'm doing it.
It's like the shackles are off again, isn't it? Everything in his personal life's going well, the darts are free-flowing, and he looks like the James Wade, as you say, 10 years ago, that was world number 2, threatening to win world championships, winning every other trophy there was to be mopped up. And I'm not suggesting that might be the case, but do you remember a few weeks ago we were having conversations, or Webby was having conversations about Van Gerwen, Wright and Clayton being the best players in the world at the minute? Let's talk about James Wade potentially being the best player on the planet at the minute, is what I'm potentially suggesting, because you look at the numbers, look at the statistics, look at what he's won over the last few weeks. If we're looking at current, as we stand right now, and we started the rankings as of the start of March, he'd be in the top 2.
I definitely can't argue with that, but given that literally everybody watching knows that I'm quite a big fan of James Wade, it's going to look incredibly biased if I sit here going, yes, he is the best. There are still times when you just, look, we are seeing this level of scoring power and performance from him at a higher level far more consistently right now, but there are still times when if Peter Wright turns up and goes berserk, or Gerwyn Price goes berserk, or Van Gerwen or Clayton, I still don't know how often I can rely on James Wade to go and match that level.
And by the way, I'm being an absolute hypocrite because I hate talking about that sort of stuff during the Premier League, because it's 16 weeks where people go completely in and out of form. So I'm contradicting my own script here. But what I'm trying to convey is James Wade is playing some of the best darts we've seen, as you say, in a decade. And it hasn't been, I think if it was Van Gerwen, Wright, Price that would put in that 115, put in this sort of night, would the headlines have been spun a little bit differently? I don't know, but what I can say is he's playing incredibly well. And we're also talking about timing, don't we? We talk about timing a heck of a lot. He's peaking at the right time in the Premier League. You don't want to be going all out week 1 to 7 and winning here, there and everywhere, and then fall off week 14, 15, 16, and then you got nothing come the playoffs, which is where, let's be honest, that's where it matters. That's where the 250k or whatever else that the big prizes are on the line. That's the important part of the season. So the fact that he's all clicking now, he'll be very happy because he's becoming the form horse in the home straight.
He is indeed. I'm just trying to find my own tweet, which is quite, I don't know, arrogant perhaps, just because Aaron said I put $200 on Wade to win the Worlds 3 months ago. I'm pretty sure as of a couple of weeks ago, it was still 33-1 to win the World Championships. And I appreciate his record is not great at the Alexandra Palace, and that you can talk about if he'd stayed on stage against Adrian Lewis till the cows come home. But, and that said again, where is this Wade when the world is on? Has he missed his chance, etc.? But 33-1 for James Wade. If you're each way on that one, by the way, I'm not sure if that's still the number. But if you're each way on that for to make a final, and it opens up a little bit. Look, last year's draw opened up massively for him to make that semi-final. He was not great at all through it, and you just wanted him to step through it because he was in, without being disrespectful, significantly easier quarter of the draw, if not half of the draw. Didn't quite play out for him like that on semi-final night. He just couldn't turn it on. He couldn't get going for it. But if that happens again, I just want to believe that he can go and put himself there just once more. Because
you also think as well you can trust him to get through a draw more than perhaps maybe some of the other bigger boys that sometimes can go out at an earlier stage, that you kind of trust Wade when he's like this to get through a draw into a semi-final, and from there if it opens up or not, then in this form he can kind of beat anyone. But look, to win a world championship is a tall order, which is why very few have ever done it in history. But I mean, we'd open up the best to never win it, Worm, if we're not careful. But I mean,
he's certainly in the conversation, isn't he? Let's be honest. Mark Williams is the most successful left-hander to have ever played the game. James Wade could not be too far away from having that moniker of his own in a different sport.
But don't tell Mark Webster that, will you?
Well, close. That's what I mean. Webster is the one that springs to mind as a left-handed winner. That I'm not sure if there are others, to be honest. Going back,
Les Wallace,
possibly. I don't think he remembers it. I don't think I remember it. Anyway, let's look ahead to next week in Scotland. Funnily enough, look at that transition work. But Danger himself will be involved in the seniors as well. Just a quick reminder to everybody else: we're heading to Lakeside in just 3.5 weeks now. So if you haven't done so already, do make sure you go and check out tickets for that one.
And I can recommend a weekend at Lakeside as well.
Correct. And we're only there for 3 days, not 10, so you know.
As much as I love the Lakeside
as well, before we go down the rabbit hole.
Oh god, yeah, there were some nights I didn't get out till 1 o'clock in the morning. But all I say is, as much as I love the Lakeside, 11 days in the same campus and the same 4 walls, basically driven by Just Eat or Uber Eats. I was happy to see civilization by day 12.
Indeed. Right, we're going to look ahead to next week, night 13 in Glasgow. A few more in the chat. Not many or any think about it, God. We're great as young men and right through. Mostly guys with longevity come into their runs in 30s. That Wade's just been absolutely solid. Tommy Wade, best left-hander, then Wallace, then Webster, in my opinion. Webby did win a world title, but it got to him a little bit after that. It's difficult to argue with that one, perhaps.
Forget Wallace won a World Masters.
Yes, and a Worlds. Did he win a Worlds? I'm sure he won a Worlds.
97.
That's why
97.
Yeah.
97 beat Marshall James.
Will there be a Wade interview of Outfield still being uploaded to the channel? There will, Nico. That's where the clip came from. So the full interview will be uploaded in full onto our YouTube channel. You guys can check that out after we finish, unless you really fancy watching more live darts, in which case the live league is back this week. So you can head over and watch Group B, Week A, Phase 4, 3. I can't lie, I lose track. But there's live darts on for you guys right now if you want to head over and watch that. Stay on the YouTube channel after we finish. Right, next week, Glasgow, 4 quarterfinals. Starting off in an all-Scotland clash, which is an absolute disaster for the PDC. But the minute they had to rearrange a couple of the nights, Berlin in particular, this is the way the fixture falls. Peter versus Gary in Scotland. Who wins?
See, I think the Scotland nights the ones where Gary comes alive. So I'm going Anderson 6-4.
Interesting. Chat room, get your predictions in as well. Try and get a few of them up on screen. No, Jamie, I do not work for Indeed. It's just a transition phrase. Unfortunately, everybody, I'm really going to be self-conscious about saying that now, but I had a French teacher at school who said the word right 164 times in an hour lesson. Not that we were counting, but that was just her way of moving on. Score predictions coming in then. Maliki says Gando 4, Peter Wright 6. A few more just jumped in. Wright 6-3. Wright 6-3. Collins going. Peter 6-5. Jamie Peter 6-2. HJV says 6-3 Wright. I think, Henry, you're the only one to have backed Ando. And there's one that coming in just to be on your side. Ando 6-4 for Yankee.
I'm used to having no friends. Don't worry about that.
It was a collective effort, Jamie. I too am going to go Peter Wright, unfortunately. Look, I'd love to see Gary Anderson and some sort of resurgence from him. But I just don't see any fight in Ando at the minute. So I'm going to say Snakey. I'm going to say 6-3 is where I'm going with that one. Job done for the world number 1. Match number 2, and it's a repeat of this week's final. Perhaps this is another little criticism of the format that we're seeing these games so frequently, so regularly. It takes the gloss off a little bit. Tonight was for 10 grand. Next week, it's going to be for a first-round spot on the right to play either Wright or Anderson. How do you see that rematch going?
I have written down James Wade 6, Johnny Clayton 3.
Interesting. Interesting indeed. I've just said indeed. Brilliant. Tommy says Clayton 6, James Wade 4. I too am going to back the Ferret next week because the Ferret has the dart, as he's the first name player in the draw bracket. A few more. Maliki, you cheeky sod. You genuinely don't think that will happen. You just wanted to get a reaction out of me, so brilliant. Well done. Clayton 6, Wade 4 for Jeff. Adyan says Wadey 6-5. Jamie says Wade 6-2. The double break against the darts. Bold. Clayton 6-5 for HJV. Yeah, that one would go with throw. On to match number 3 then. Going Price against Michael Smith. And I don't have the new table because the PDC still haven't posted, or they hadn't last time I checked. But. There we go. 6 minutes ago, it's finally up. There's only 3 points between these two, and there's a big gap. There's 7 points difference between the top 4 and Gerwin Price right now. 10 points between Mark Smith and Gerwin Price. Has Gezi just dragged himself into the same position that Michael Smith and Gary Anderson are in? A loss here would be absolutely catastrophic for him.
And this is the thing with Gezi's Premier League, it's been so inconsistent. I mean, he had the week in Belfast where he just popped everything off a lampshade and hit 2-9 darters and just hit meteoric levels that just felt unstoppable and untouchable. But you actually drag it down from there. It's been very inconsistent and almost very patchy at times. I'm going to go with Gezi for the win. And look, I'd love to see Michael make another final and just kind of keep his playoff race going. But even though he's inconsistent, he's even inconsistent in what walk-on music he's using in the minute. I just think maybe he edges a 6-5 or something along those lines. So I'm gonna go Price last leg.
With the darts as well. Tommy's got Price in the last leg as well. Aaron's got a big turnaround for Michael Smith. He's got that one going 6-3, 6-2 for Jamie. Colin says 6-3 Smith. Can Wade win every week just to keep PB off the air? I don't know. Look, we forget. OD is his baby, not mine. I'll just take the piss out of him when I can. I think Price just wants the Premier League to be over. Look, he's not really had a clean run at Premier League for a while now, has he? We've had the COVID breakdown of one. He's had his injury this time. You just want him to see him get a full campaign run at it, but I completely agree in that regard. Jeff says Smith pinches it, as does Maliki as well. Premier League is interfering with his box career. He's not boxing anymore. It's been advised on medical grounds not to continue with that. And his Price still using Raw. He's not. It lasted 2 weeks. It lasted longer in the charts than it did. Let's go in Price's walk-on. Brilliant. I'm going to say that Smith wins this one, actually. I think he just keeps his hopes alive, although they very likely will be dashed in the following match. But he's got to do something at some point. And if it doesn't happen this week, I've just looked at the fixtures for the week after, and I definitely don't think it happens with the part of the draw he's in next week. So Marcus Smith wins this one 6-3, I'm going to say as well, pretty comfortably, unless we see something remarkable from Gezi. And on to the final quarterfinal of the night, Michael Van Gerwen against Joe Cullen. Van Gerwen's not played badly in his last few losses. He's just been shut down by very, very good performances. Does Joe Cullen have that in his locker next week?
Cullen is an enigma and on any given week can do anything. But on this occasion, I've got MVG. I've got Van Gerwen down as a 6-2 winner. As you say, he's been... You look at the averages, it doesn't deviate much from the 101, 102 bracket. He's just been unlucky that in the games he has played, he's either had an inspired opponent or an opponent who's just been able to to kind of go through the gears as tonight James Wade did.
Yeah, I'm struggling to find another scoreline in this one. And again, this is where Joe Cullen is potentially going to be pushed into that category below. He's on 15 points, but if Snakebite keeps picking up points and stretching that gap between him, that gap just gets even wider between fourth and fifth, which doesn't do a lot for the people below them either. Struggling to see where Joe Cullen's next solid patch comes from right now. So I'm going to say 6-2 to Michael Van Gerwen. Chat room, you guys have all been amazing in your predictions, but you know what comes next from your 4 winners. Henry, pick me your 2 finalists and who wins night number 13. Unlucky for some in the OVO Hydro Glasgow.
Well, I was born on the 13th, so you can make whatever pun you want about it being lucky or unlucky. Right, so
just don't worry, told you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I don't think it needs to be said now.
So, based on my sheet, I'm going Wade v Van Gerwen in the final, a game which has been played 172 times in this year's Premier League.
Certainly feels like it.
It's been played more times than Chase the Sun. I'm going to make you pick your finalists before I make a prediction for this final because I'm conflicted.
I'm the host. You're going to make me. You can request that I do. You can't make. No, I'm joking. I genuinely, as well, you're a far better host than I will ever be, and I'm just sat here asking the questions while everything's going wrong. I'm like, Jar. I do it with Jars on as well. I'm like, brilliant. Yeah, better than me. I can't remember. I've got to.
Is it that hard
though? Scotland crowd, Scotland player. Peter Wright beats Clayton. And do you know what? Smith beats Van Gerwen. So I've got a Peter Wright.
He's a believer.
Peter Wright versus Michael Smith final.
A repeat of the World Championship final. And you know what? He will get some of that crowd as well at the OVO Glasgow. My God. So, I'm going to... Do you know what? Phil Bars is going to hate me for this. I'm going James Wade 6, Michael Van Gerwen 4.
Yes! Leading it as well. And Cam's doing it. Everybody is now on my wavelength. It is James Wade, left, right, centre.
It's a James Wade hype train, and you better join it.
For the second week in a row, I've got him to lose in the first round because I'm just still so scarred from following James Wade for so long. And no matter how good it gets, there's just an 82 average waiting round the corner where he just cannot be bothered. So
Take that for Berlin.
I've got more heartbreak for Michael Smith, though. I've just told him he gets to a final, but I have got Peter Wright beating him next week. A return to the winning circle for the reigning world number 1 and world champion, and in doing so, that wraps up the top 4 with 3 weeks to go.
So what you're saying is the league format doesn't change, but we'll have some tournaments.
Pretty much.
You guys will have Darts Gold on for 3 weeks, might you know?
Please.
We're punting V Van Barneveld for the 110th time.
Do you know what? Darts Gold is brilliant, but they need to find some more gold matches because they certainly exist, but I just don't get to see any variety.
Do you know what I'd love to see? There's surely got to be somewhere, and I've said this for a while, there's got to be somewhere on the archives. There's got to be more than just one leg of the 1994 World Championship somewhere in the archives. Surely on the VHS, and it would be VHS on Sky somewhere, surely. You know what? I'd love to see a Darts Gold. And look, I don't care if the games are rubbish. I'd love to see a Darts Gold with some of the games from that first ever PDC World Championships. Just to kind of see what it was all like and all about, and just kind of make some comparisons to now. That'd be great to watch. Make it happen, Sky.
Across the ceiling and the alcohol is probably not the look they want for the current sport. But yeah, I completely agree. That would be absolutely mint. Which is how tonight's show's been, actually. Absolutely mint. Thank you very much. Buddy, look, a lot of people giving me some abuse. Come on, God, have some faith, Wadey, for back-to-back weeks. People are turning it on, you know. Sam says, Price to turn up, win the night and close the gap on that top four. Bold, but I like it. That's Gareth Bale. I thought that was Jordan Henderson, and I was about to give you some praise as well. Craig says, by the way, Hydro will be rocking, and we love the Dutch. Interesting. Johnny Clayton, Mark Van Gogh, and James Wade in fourth place. Still not decided. Interesting. Bob thinks that Peter Wright will still be reeled in. A look ahead then for you guys. As I said, the live league is currently on the YouTube channel. You can head over to that one as soon as we finish streaming. Euro Tour returns this weekend from tomorrow. We won't have all watch along action for that, as we never do, but we will try and keep an eye on it over this weekend as the PDC Women's Series returns. 4 more events this weekend. Mikura Suzuki and Yuki Sakaguchi make their debut for this. Sakaguchi, makes her first appearance in this year's campaign. No Bo Greaves on the entry list, unfortunately, which would have been interesting to see if she can put the cat amongst the pigeons, but those women are still in the hunt for those all-important inaugural World Match Play spots for the women's game. So we'll be live across the weekend. Myself, Phil Bars when he's back from Dublin, Lee Boyce will be on at some point, and whoever else we can drag into the team throughout the weekend. Wherever you are,
you bribe the most.
Pretty much, yeah. Fire it into the WhatsApp. Who's free? And we'll go from there. Massive thank you to everybody that has watched along, and all the support from our sponsors, BoyleSports, for making all of our Premier League coverage happen, and our long-term partners, Windmill, Red Dragon, and Modus. Wherever you are this weekend, folks, do enjoy your long bank holiday weekend in the UK or beyond. Just have a good time over the weekend. It's been really, really great having you here this evening. And with that, guys, we will speak to you next week. Bye.